future of agriculture, for example, won't be realised, or the benefits that may be within it cannot become a reality without proper resourcing and proper funding. And unfortunately, as we speak today, that's not the case. A reduction in payments means we can't make any progress at all. I think the future is bright. If not, I fear.
Dzisiaj już nie zastanawiamy się nad tym, czy rolnictwo będzie musiało mierzyć się z konkretnymi wyzwaniami, ale zastanawiamy się z iloma naraz, ponieważ wygląda na to, że zarówno zmiany klimatyczne, jak i regulacje, ale też umowy handlowe będą miały wpływ albo już mają wpływ na rolnictwo, z którym muszą radzić sobie rolnicy, producenci, ale też organizacje. Dzisiaj rozmawiam z przedstawicielami zarówno Parlamentu Europejskiego, jak i ekspertami do spraw rolnictwa, a także osobami, które zasiadają bądź zasiadały w Komisji Europejskiej i staramy się porozmawiać o rozwiązaniach, o tym, jak można pomóc rolnictwu, ale nie tylko mówić o tym, co trzeba zrobić, ale kto i kiedy faktycznie powinien podjąć działania. Zapraszam Was serdecznie na ten odcinek.
Hello, my name is Magda Urbaniak and this is AGROMANIA. My guest today is Barry Cowen, member of European Parliament. Hello.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm good, thank you for being with us. Let's go directly to the most important question regarding situation of agriculture in European Union and globally too. Do you think that the current CAP reflects sufficiently the needs of farmers?
Well, the current CAP versus the new CAP are two different animals insofar as the architecture and infrastructure associated with the existing Common Agricultural Policy will no longer be under the new proposals from the Commission.
Yes.
Now, there are rules and controls that govern agriculture should be within the remit of the Common Agricultural Policy and that file. The NRPP that's proposed would create a scattering that we don't believe represents true value for agriculture. So we'd be anxious that the existing file would contain all matters agriculture rather than be scattered across finance and other areas. But at the end of the day, farmers, producers, processors, those associated with the sector are not hung up on pillars or programs. It's about what arrives, what supports them, how it supports them to produce quality goods in a sustainable fashion and allows them to make a profit thereafter. But, the controls associated with the delivery of a good common agricultural policy, its ambition that's contained in the Commission's future of agriculture, for example, won't be realised, or the benefits that may be within it cannot become a reality without proper resourcing and proper funding. And unfortunately, as we speak today, that's not the case.
So if we're talking about what's needed for farmers right now, what would you say that EU could do to help farmers to grow or maybe even to survive? Because right now we have so many challenges at the right time, both climate-wise challenges, but also regulation-wise. In your opinion, how EU can support farmers right now?
Okay, well, as I said, we got to get the finance right first of all. And as it stands, the existing Common Agricultural Policy expends in the region of 386 billion euro in totality. The proposals that's contained within the Commission's first shot, we'll call it, is 294 billion. So there's a huge shortfall there at 20%. Now I can understand much of the reasoning behind that is associated with the commitment that the Union and the Commission is making to defence and security. And many Eastern Bloc countries, of course, are more preoccupied with tanks than tractors, to be quite honest. And you can understand and appreciate that. And Europe is only at its best when it's united, so we can't allow that to divide us. And there has to be a recognition on the part of Western countries like our own of that fact. But having said that, there are ways and means by which we can close the gap and at least start on a level playing pitch in relation to the funding by virtue of the commitment that's made as a result of the safeguard within Mercosur, which is an extra 48 billion was committed to there. There's also a separate 45 rural development billion fund provided that's outside CAP. If we brought them straight into CAP and front-loaded them, we could have similar funding that we have presently. And that means then at least for those whose single farm payment is based on area farmed in a member state, you won't see a reduction in payments. A reduction in payments means we can't make any progress at all. But the raison d'etre of any common agricultural policy is food production systems that align with environmental ambition, that align with consumer sentiment, but nowadays too have to be cognizant of the geopolitical realities, which is having such a huge impact on input costs. So the Commission is expected to do a bit more in the meantime as regards the issues around fuel, as regards energy, as regards CBAM proposals, all very well intended and of great benefit, especially in the context of climate change and its implications. But the realities are farmers cannot make the commitment that they want to in the absence of direct help and assistance associated with input costs.
Do you think that EU speak, or maybe better word would be talk, with farmers enough? By that I mean, do EU really understand farmers today in Europe? Honestly, I know you member of European Parliament.
Yeah, well, look, let's say the members of the European Parliament do and should and wouldn't be elected to their roles in rural areas unless they did. So we'd say that's a given. The Commission is a different kettle of fish because the Commission are bureaucrats, are economists, and deal with facts and figures and science in a way in which the rest of us don't, and they don't necessarily recognise the value of even less intensive agriculture in rural areas, less profitable, but supplementary to a family's income, but huge contributors to the respective communities and regions. And that has a value too that needs to be measured, and it's up to us to ensure that that is measured in the same way as the value associated with increased sustainable productivity is recognised as well. And it's a job of us as public representatives. It's the job of the European Council too, which is representative of governments, which again should be one that is in touch with those that give them the privilege to be there. And between both, they should have the wherewithal and the power to win favour over the Commission and ensure we're united. Because as I said earlier, Europe as an entity and the EU project succeeds best when it's united. And we saw that with Brexit in our case. We saw that with COVID. We've seen it with the response to the war in Ukraine, the help and assistance that was available to ensure that the energy hit wasn't as severe as was first thought. And in the meantime, of course, working towards creating an atmosphere that offers more alternatives rather than the overdependency we had as a bloc on the likes of Russian gas.
What do you think? What are the biggest threats to the future competitiveness of agriculture in Europe, particularly in the context of rising production costs and global competition?
It's input costs. I have no fears in our ability to win favour, to win trade in the context of increased international trade, which is essential. But we have to address our competitiveness to succeed in that realm. The quality of our produce is exceptional. Those international trade deals that we are doing and have done with the likes of Mercosur, with the Mercosur countries, with the UK, with the US, with Australia recently, with India recently, create huge opportunities for the Union as a bloc and challenges too for different sectors, not least agriculture in certain cases. But it's incumbent on those that represent us in agreeing these trade deals that they're cognizant of to seek reciprocity in relation to standards, in relation to controls, in relation to health and safety and food safety, and that's essential, and that we insist upon that because it rises all boats other than ours too, which is important for everybody's sake, because it's imperative that we increase production, do so sustainably, because the world's population is increasing and the needs are greater.
But you mentioned Mercosur and other deals with Australia and India. Would you agree that in terms of those deals, they are beneficial for some sectors, obviously, but agriculture, European agriculture, is a victim of those deals?
Well, where we think it could be detrimental to agriculture, we agree to we agree to carve out. You've seen in India, the dairy sector was carved out of that deal. And you'd see similarly in the US with other sectors being carved out of the tariff regime that they are intent on implementing and is being implemented. And we have to acknowledge that because we're dealing with a sovereign state and a sovereign government, and we can't dictate to them, but we have to tailor these deals as best we can to suit those that we represent. And agriculture, I think, is very well represented and has been so. In cases where that threat exceeded the belief and contention of the negotiators, you've seen the Parliament act as a conduit and as a bridge to rectify that in Mercosur by virtue of the safeguards that have been put in place to counteract the fears and concerns that may have been expressed and that may become a reality. And if so, we have potential to address those fears and concerns and worries by virtue of the funding that's been put in place and the different locks that are safety nets that are in place.
Do you think that Green Deal it's something that just has a really bad PR, or it's something that really make agriculture weaker?
Look, the science will tell you that the Green Deal is a pathway towards, sustainable food production that, as I said, meets with ambition, that meets with consumer sentiment, and that has production systems that can achieve that goal. The challenge is the input costs that have come in the meantime because of the geopolitical situation. The challenge is the ambition on the part of the Commission in relation to CBAM is well meant and well intended, but hard to implement, especially in present circumstances. And there has to be provision by the Union to cater for those roadblocks as they emerge. We never would have thought we'd have met such a roadblock that we have presently. But that has to be addressed and can't be disregarded, because the alternative would be the deterioration of the ability of the farming community to produce food at the rate and quality that we want to see. But they can only do so in a way in which they can make a profit. Existing conditionality, I don't think should be increased. I think there should be a commitment on the part of the Union, which is contained in the Future of Agriculture paper that has been produced by Hansen, which recognises the need to reward those who follow innovation, who follow new technologies, who follow new work practices, rather than the cost foregone metric that you had previously. But there also has to be, as I said earlier, a value on less productive, less intensive, but equally as important in the context of climate management. We have to move faster in providing tools that reward carbon credits, nature credits, and trading associated with both. It rewards biodiversity, it rewards set aside, it rewards sequestration, for example, none of which are adequately rewarded presently.
A lot of things to do, right? I mean,
a lot to do. A lot done, but more to do.
Both, a lot of changes. When I speak with Polish farmers, they say that there's so many regulations coming from EU, so they are not able to focus on just doing their job, but they just have to, day by day, following the new rules that they have to align. And when you talk with farmers, what they say, what their condition, what they feel, what are the main challenges they facing?
Well, that whole area of regulation and the amount of work off farm associated with compliance is a great challenge. And this mandate, no more than the last one, which made commitments in relation to simplification but didn't succeed, we have to see greater sight and proof of that being the fact. And there are some simplification measures going through trilogue. Presently, I was involved with one in relation to mandatory contracts, which will be a help, and compromises are reached in order to ensure that there's progress. I think one of the greatest challenges, obviously, is creating an atmosphere that caters for generational renewal. And it's all about rewarding those that follow innovation and technology and new practices, but also rewarding young farmers, creating starter packs for them. But parallel to that, member states must be obliged to provide exit packages for elderly farmers too, because in Europe, I think only 12% of active participating, farmers are under the age of 40. That's a damning statistic, which has to be addressed. And thankfully, there is a commitment in the new CAP to go from 3% to 6% of member states spending on generation renewal. I know in the case of my own government at home, we've committed to 8% and will have parallel to that, farm retirement schemes.
It looks like people from cities, smaller, bigger cities, they feel like the farm is a different world. Like there's something that they don't have to take care about. Do you think that European Union promotes agriculture enough today? Because the image of farmers is not the best today. I would say, it's a lot of emotions, mostly not the not positive ones.
Yeah, well, look, it has increased its only in recent weeks. It increased its allocation towards the promotion of agri-food exports by the EU from a low of 140 to 210 million per annum, which is of benefit to highlighting the quality, the standards, the safety, and the merits and a nutritional value of our food, which is vitally important. But I think too we can go a bit further. As I mentioned earlier, the fears and concerns we have for our own security. You can't build a defence and security budget, plan, delivery without corresponding commitment to food security. And that's an argument, we are making in the Parliament. That's an argument we are making as shadow rapporteurs in relation to the negotiations around the next common agricultural policy. And I would hope that will be recognised in increased funding over and above the figures I mentioned to you earlier.
It's interesting that you mention older farmers because both CAP and in experts discussion we talk about empower young farmers because this is something that it's another challenge in agriculture that we are missing young people who want to stay on the countryside or go, which is less, I would say, less popular, going from the city to the countryside. But also there are older farmers, right, who need support. That's interesting that maybe we should focus on them too, to help them implement innovation because this is one of the biggest challenges.
If they can, but we should focus too on making it easier for them to pass it over to the next generation. Because to be fair to that next generation, they are the ones that have grown up more climate aware, more in tune with new, as I said earlier, technologies, innovations and practices that they want to champion in order to realise the ambition for our food production, but also for profit that can, if not give them a full livelihood, certainly supplement their income. And, it's almost like looking at two different sectors. Those that are highly productive, highly intensive, good arable land that accommodates best farming practices, but to chase after the innovative ways of production from a sustainable perspective. And then the less quality. You have to acknowledge, I think it's about 2/3 of the land in Europe is owned by farm holdings are only 5 hectares. So that's a huge mass of land. It's a huge mass of people that are not necessarily, their primary income is not necessarily derived from those holdings. But we must encourage new ways of finding supplementary income to go alongside their off-farm income, whether, as I said earlier, nature and carbon trading especially offer huge potential, and it's near time we've seen results and a currency that can be cashed in the future.
What would you say to the young people who are wondering if they want to be a farmer or not?
I think there's huge opportunities. There's a challenge to have production systems that align with their own and their peers' consumer sentiments, and climate ambition, environmental ambition, which has to be realised. And nobody knows that better than them, but we have to reward them for moving in that direction. As I said, rather than in previous common agricultural policies, it was merely cost forgone metric. To move away from that, find ways of rewarding, whether I see at home in the likes of a dairy beef scheme to try and bring those sectors closer together, and less dependency on dairy beef product being exported for veal, by inducing farmers to bring them together to produce another product that can appeal to the dairy sector and the beef sector, and has an positive impact on the environment as a result of it not necessarily leading to export of bull calves out of the country, for example.
Also, it looks like in the next CAP there will be quite a support for young farmers, right? That's the plan.
Yeah, like I said, we're moving from a minimal spend of 3% to 6%, and some states will go further. In our own case in Ireland, we've committed to 8%.
This event that we're participating today is about the future of the agriculture, and I'm wondering, how do you see the future of the culture in next 5 to 10 years?
We're at a crossroads. There's no doubt. We have to align defence and security with food security for it to get a fair funding provision. If it gets a fair funding provision, the commitments that's been made by the Commission in relation to the future of agriculture around the commitment to reward innovation and progress and sustainable production with reward for climate goals, I think the future is bright. If not, I fear.
That's good. I would say there's still hope for the future. At least we all doing all we can to make agriculture safe, as we can tell that European Parliament is trying to do. The one thing for the very end, I would say, do you think that it's the agriculture, it's respectful sector? I mean, you've mentioned about it before, but this is really something that people in European respect in general public, the agriculture and the farmers.
I think there's a growing respect. Yes, of course. People are well educated. And
I would say better and better.
Better educated, and
yeah.
they've a very good understanding of the what it takes to put food on the table, and especially the changes, the transition that's taken place. There's a recognition that that's not easy. There's a recognition too that we do have to become more competitive. There's a recognition that we do have to look at, our protein generation and the potential to have that here in Europe rather than exporting it in. The whole issue of fertilizers, coming up with counter proposals to deal with the way in which we use them into the future. There's a great recognition and appreciation of the need to improve water quality, and that there's a big expectation on the part of the farming community and the agricultural sector to play its role in that. So look, there's an interdependency across society that people are much more cognizant of now, and the farming community is well placed within that to be well taught.
Yeah, I would say that all the sectors needs education.
Yes.
I would say both farmers and also people who benefit from farming. Thank you very much for this conversation.
You're welcome.
My guest was Barry Cowen, member of European Parliament. My name is Magda Urbaniak, and that was AGROMANIA.